It would help if the microphone was on, right? It was on mute. So it's so good to see you all this morning, and it's awesome to see the conversation happening already. Hey, Don. Okay, so yay. Okay, if you hear me twice, you might have two windows open. Unless other people having an echo issue. So that's happened to me before, and it's because I have two windows open. So that's a trick there. Okay, so I said last time that I had a quote that I was going to be reading, and okay. So it's from The Intellectual Life, which is not as dull as it seems. I actually started, I don't know, it's one of those books that's been on my shelf for like 7 or 8 years. And I know I started it maybe 5 years ago, probably about 5.5, because I'm pretty sure I had a baby at the time. So it was not the right time for this kind of book, because I started it and was like, I can't even. Not that it's not actually difficult to read, but I think right off the bat, he says, you can have an intellectual life in 2 hours a day. And at the time, that's what I was just like, I can't even. And so I much prefer Brandy's 30 minutes a day. But, and so I'm in a little better space now where even when he says 2 hours, I can say, or 30 minutes, and this is all still actually good information. I'm really good at owning books. Me too. Yes, this was a Dr. Perrin recommend. On the scale, how near to Hicks, like in difficulty, like, denseness, it's below Hicks, where you're not really having to stretch your mind to comprehend what he's saying and kind of work it out. But what he's talking about is ideas and having a life of the mind. So actually, I think that some of you who are Charlotte Mason people will have a little connection here. And actually, I have another bit that I meant to read on the Scolay Sisters podcast we recorded the other day, and I totally forgot. But it's basically about the science of relations. So if those ideas, if you're into that kind of thing, it's actually pretty cool in here. This is a French guy in the this edition was published in the 80s. Preface to the 1934 edition. So, turn of the century. I don't know if that was the first edition or the second edition. So something like that. Dates from 1920. There we go. So about 1920, this is a French gentleman. And so he says here, between conceiving and planning and carrying out and perfecting, how many delays there are, how many failures. The habit of effort brings these stages closer together and carries the work from conception to completion along a rapid slope. So just if that's how you're feeling, if you're feeling like I have the idea and I have the plan, but all from having the plan to making it happen, there's just this gap. I just find that coming across sentences like that and realizing it's not just me, and it's not just moms at home, it's even intellectual people in the 1920s in France. Yes, so the habit of effort right there. And that's what we're building. We're building it through baby steps with our intervals and just paying attention to what's on our plate, not overfilling our plate and trying to conceive of too many ideas, right? It's not just work harder, get farther. It's being clear about the path that you're following and really sticking to that path instead of trying to travel down 5 paths at the same time. That's just physically impossible. And that's kind of what we're doing a lot of the time. So, how many delays there are, how many failures. We all experience that, and we need to just get up, brush ourselves off, and keep going. I think that's a big part of the habit of effort. I don't think he's saying here that if you have the habit of effort, there are no longer any delays or failures. It's that you have the habit of getting back up and continuing along your path. And then you find that it actually is a rapid slope. Maybe that's why you're falling, right? You get there, even though it feels like an uphill climb a lot of the times. There's an uphill and then there's a downhill. So there we go. I just thought that that applied here to what we were doing. And now let's talk about task managers. And I could tell that some of you were already doing that. So a task management system boils down to simply being a home where your to-dos live. So when you think of something that you have to do, it has to be written down right away, right? And usually that's going to be the brain dump, but it has to have a home where it lives if it's not going to be done right away. So let's say I realize that I need to do something and I don't, well, I just was reminded of an actual example in my email inbox this morning, just before I hopped on. I was like, oh, so hold on a second while I write this down. Come to think of it, better follow my own advice, right? Well, I've got my weekly review sheet right here, right? So I hope you have this because we're going to be doing, let's see, you're not going to be able to see. There we go. The weekly review process, this worksheet. So we're going to be filling this out. So go ahead and print that off if you don't already have that weekly review worksheet, because we're going to be doing that together. But I'm going to use this as a little brain dump. There's space on it because as you think of things, they should be written down. But someone asked me on Sunday, we have little gift bags. So our community has a lot of refugee families, and there are people in our church involved in helping them and working with the ESL stuff and various things. And our church makes up little gift bags to give to new moms because of the language barrier, they often can't get help through the pregnancy center. And we have a connection with getting to know some of them. So we make up little gift bags with diapers and various things. So that, and I'm not actually, that's something other ladies are doing in our church, but I'm the women's ministry coordinator. So I kind of am a touch person. Anyway, they need more diapers for their gift bags because there are 2 new babies and the diapers are out. And I was doing cookie duty and someone told me, and I said, oh, no problem. I'll get those. Did I write it down right away? No. And I even mentioned it out loud to my husband earlier this week. I said, oh, and I'm going to be doing that. And he said, okay, that's great. Did I write it down? No. So I just saw an email from the girl who's kind of arranging it. I think actually I didn't even open it. I'm sure she's asking if someone wants to go with her. Anyway, right. I was supposed to bring her diapers for that on Sunday. That's tomorrow. So I'm writing it down. Today I'm going to be stopping at Costco and buying a box of diapers. Buy a box of diapers. Write it down. So those kind of random tasks that just pop in, like people ask you to do something and you're like, oh, sure, that's no problem. I already was at Costco this week, but did it get on my Costco list? No, because I didn't write it down. So it didn't make it into the system. It didn't make it into the home. So we have to have the home before it goes into the home. And then we have to look at it, right? And talking about delays, failures. Having the system doesn't mean it always works perfectly. right? It doesn't work automatically. We have to keep working it. So this was an example where I have a place for tasks to go. I have a place for my store lists. And did I write it down right away? No. So we need these mottos and we need to keep telling it to ourselves. We're never above it. And that's sometimes the problem, is thinking, oh, well, I'll remember. And you'll remember at the wrong time when you can't actually do anything about it, right? Yes, and using the phone and Siri or Hello Google or whatever, any of those are great places for the brain, for writing it down right away. But then once you have written it down right away, then how do you make sure that you take action on it at the right time? So I could write down this note, buy a box of diapers, but unless it makes it onto my Costco list or onto a task on my weekly review sheet, it's not doing me any good, right? Because it's not happening. So it needs to be where you will see it when you need it. And that's the real trick. And there's two pieces to that trick. There's having a home, and then there's looking at it. So your task management system is the place where the tasks live, and where it really starts building traction in your life is when it's a place that future tasks can be put, and then you'll be reminded of them at appropriate times. So that's where apps come in handy, because you can not only put due dates on things and set reminders so it pops up on your phone, but also you can set them to be repeating. So I was just looking at mine last night in preparing, and my task manager popped up for next week, for September 1st. Send the letter of intent. In our state for homeschooling, you have to send a letter to the school district telling them which kids you're homeschooling. And I have on that task, because it's repeating every year. This is probably the 4th or 5th year that this exact same time I've entered it once. And for 5 years, it's reminded me at the right time. In the note, it has a link to the form so I can print it out. And I mean, I have the address in my address book, but last year I went ahead and put the address right in the task note as well, because then it's all right there. I print it off, fill it out, I can get it sent. So I find the repeating functions super helpful. But you can accomplish the same thing with paper. And I saw up above in the chat that people were talking about Tickler files, and I sent a link in the email to Tickler files. That's the analog, the paper way to do it, where you have a file system. And I don't know if David Allen's is more complicated, because I think you also have folders for weeks or days or something, and you're moving folders all the time. But again, we don't want to overcomplicate things, and none of us probably have that many things where we're needing to pull out papers and reminders every single day. So even if you just have a file box or a file, something small that has 12, and you have one for every month, you could pull that out. You can pull out the stack, because it's probably manageable to deal with every weekly review. And just see, okay, right, my son's birthday's next month, so this month I should be birthday shopping, or we should be setting the birthday plans, because we don't want that to sneak up on us. That kind of thing, where you're giving yourself so these are the things that have to happen this month, and you can add things to it. So I don't know. I think with a Tickler file, I might have one sheet in there that just was like a master sheet. These are repeating tasks that need to happen this month every year. And then maybe that's where you would stick notes, where you thought of something that needed to happen, but it's not going to happen this week or right away. Then you just stick it in, this month, if it needs to happen or could happen this month. And you're going to pull that out during your weekly review. But basically, it's a home for your to-do items or maybe even project start dates. It doesn't have to be single tasks only, but like there's a fundraiser event at our church in December that I help coordinate. That's definitely a project. So I have a reminder that comes up for putting bulletin, some of those first tasks that need to happen, but I probably wouldn't, remember like, oh yeah, I actually have to start that. Even though that event's in December, I actually have to start some of that thinking in October, or bulletin announcements, or, getting information out to people so they can be ready. I need to be reminded in October to start thinking and planning for this year's project. So anything like that, where you want to be reminded to do something at a particular time, there needs to be a home for those reminders so that it's not taking up your brain space and you're not thinking about it and trying to remind yourself. And, it's just the common human experience, only remembering at the wrong times where you really can't do anything about it, or writing a note to yourself and leaving it or losing it, and it didn't actually help, right? So it's a place for those to go. And as you think of those things, like, I need to stop at Costco today and get those diapers, that can go on any kind of your planner page, if that's in your planner, clipboard, your weekly review, even though that's going to be this week, it's not next week. When it's on a page where you're going to see it during your review so that you can take action on it at the right time. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be just so, or, color coded or whatever. If you have a place for them to go and you start building the habit of looking at it, eventually, as long as you add the tasks and look at it, it will work. And the more you use it, the better you'll get at it and the better it will become, because you'll start making adjustments that fit you and how you actually use it. Right. So renewing car tabs, things like that. Making eye appointments for the kids. That's a good example where you don't necessarily think about whether or not you need to have it be a recurring system on your end. So for example, most of our kids have glasses. Insurance covers their eye doctor visit. So it's like, we should do the annual visit for the kids. And they don't schedule annual, like for the dentist, you just schedule your next appointment there and it becomes a calendar event. It's never really a to-do item. But the eye doctor doesn't make appointments a year out, or at least ours doesn't. So I could put every year, a recurring make eye appointments for everyone on my list. But, the eye doctor already has that in his system, where they send out the postcard and says, you're due next month for your annual eye checkup. That's when it goes onto my list, because so their system's already got the reminder in place. So I'm like, I don't need it. It's good enough for me. So it doesn't have to have, so examine what you actually need. And the more you keep it pared down to what you actually need, the more likely you're going to be to use it and keep it up, because there's not that pressure of keeping it perfect or just so. It's like, this is just something to be useful. Would that be useful? No, then keep it out. Keep anything that resembles clutter out, because that's going to, or anything unnecessary, because then you start, the 2-year-old brain or the lazy brain starts saying, yeah, that's just overkill. I don't need to really pay attention to that. If you keep it limited to what you really do need to pay attention to, it'll work more. Yeah, I know those cards do. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. And I know that there was a lot of conversation here going on about task managers. And so I think we're going to move on from that. But you can keep chatting if you have something that works, because the chat logs, are also super helpful to have. Okay. Right. I don't take the reminder cards for actual appointments made, but our eye doctor doesn't make the next follow-up appointment at the desk. So orthodontist, dentist, any of those kind of things, those just go on the calendar right away. But the eye doctor won't make an appointment for next year. So they send out a reminder. Now, say our doctor does not send out a reminder card for physicals. You're just left on your own to remember. So that might be something that needs to go in there. We pretty much just make an appointment if there ends up being something we need. And we're like, and look, it's been a year, so we're going to call this our physical. So again, doesn't necessarily need to be in the list, because that's not how we're doing it. Right. And the app, a lot of times the apps for task managers are set up, or the tutorials act as if it's your functioning to-do list, like what you're using every day to work from. So they have functionality, or just how they explain how to use them. Most of them assume that this is what you're looking at multiple times a day to see what you should be doing next today. And that's not, you can, but that's not the way that I'm recommending using it. It's more of a filing cabinet where you're referencing it during your weekly review to put it onto your action list that's in front of your face instead of opening the app. You do get the pop-up reminders on your phone, just in case, and that's, I find, very handy. But for the most part, it is a place where we're looking, we're storing what needs to be done, and we're looking at it weekly to put on our action list for the week. And, also intervally. I need to make that an adverb. I need intervally to be a word. But yeah, what we're actually taking action on is going to go on our weekly dashboard, and I'm just going to call it a weekly dashboard, even if, it's not the template that I have created that you can use. But if that's your planner page, if that's just a piece of paper that you're kind of sketching things out on, whatever you use to keep track of this week and what's on the agenda, what needs to be done this week, you do need some kind of weekly view paper. So we're going to do a weekly review now. And so what you need, let's look here at our list. Okay. Okay. Weekly review checklist. So before we start, let's just double check that we have what we need. You need to have in front of you to reference right now as we work together, your calendar, your weekly dashboard, whatever that looks like for you. And if you don't have one that you have been using, either just print off the dashboard template, or and that link was in the email, or just use a blank piece of paper, quite honestly, and make it kind of like a brain dump for the week. And you can do that for a few weeks and maybe get a feel for what you would like in a dashboard, because different people like different views or seeing their time in different kinds of chunks. Some people really like the hourly, some people hate them. You just want to have notes for yourself for the week that are clear to you. That's it. So, you can start with a blank piece of paper, or, you know, a blank bullet journal spread, and learn what you want to have in the week, and then make a dashboard or a bullet journal format that incorporates what you need and not anything that you don't need, which is the problem with a lot of planners, is they just have space for what you don't need. Okay, so have your planner, your dashboard, that's the same, your dashboard for the week, your calendar. If you have a brain dump notebook all in one place, whatever you've been jotting notes to self, you need to have that in front of you. And then I highly recommend having this weekly review process. It's kind of like a guided brain dump just for the weekly review right here. So let's go through that. So life review. Read over your goals, vocations, and interval plans. So this is just a quick reminder of where you're at right now. It's kind of like, okay, I'm sitting down. What are we doing? That's where we start. We sit down. Okay, what's going on? I don't remember. So we just do a quick reminding ourselves, all right, what are my vocations? And so this is where just having, okay, so I have my interval plan. I'm going to see what people, okay. Hold the dashboard up. Yes. Mine's filled in. So it's this. It wasn't in the email. Oh no. Okay. I will grab that real quick. What do we got here? Create your weekly dashboard. I am so sorry. Let's see. Okay. I have it in 3 formats. I'm going to copy and paste all 3 links in. Actually, you know what I'm going to do so you don't lose them? I'm going to put it in Ask a Question. It used to be called the overview. Okay. So PDF, it's in the question box. First the PDF, then I have too many tabs open. This is the doc. And then there's also the pages format, which is the Mac word processor. And the fonts don't come across if you don't have the fonts, or from Pages, which is what I created it in, to Word. So you just got to kind of mess with that and change it to look like what you want. There you go. Use the word that applies to you, that appeals to you. There we go. Okay. So you should have access, this is what I should put here, to the seminar page, but unless you have, so purchasing only the seminar gives you access to the seminar, but not to the full course. Lifetime access to everything, and there's written lessons. You get the video live lessons, and this is where I didn't turn the link on. There we go. Show. There we go. Okay, now there's a green button there for the seminar page. Okay, and you do have to be logged in. Whether or not you have to log in every time depends on how your browser handles cookies and that kind of thing. If you have a problem, clearing your cache and then logging back in often solves the problem. Okay, back to our weekly review. Okay, so when we feel overwhelmed, this is where the weekly review really helps. So let's take a big deep breath. And even if you don't have that dashboard printed off or can't print it off right now, just use a blank piece of paper. And if you want, draw columns or something in the days, and just do a rough sketch right now. And then working through the whole process, then later today, you can maybe put it into a planner or figure out your dashboard. But really, if this is something that's very new and very unfamiliar, then actually starting with a blank piece of paper is not a bad idea at all. And just let it be a loose collection, and kind of all over the place. Make some kind of box or column or something for the different days, and just let your mind associate and brain dump and figure things out as you go. Okay. It's not something which you do just right and then it's magic. It's just a thinking, and it's just a thinking and writing things down exercise. So however that ends up looking, it's going to be helpful. Okay. So just look at your vocations, and that's why I print them out on the other side of my interval plan. So my interval plan, holding this up, my interval plan lives on my clipboard, and actually it has my vocations right down there. But I also have in simplified organization, you work through writing vocation statements, kind of like not quite mission statements, but directional statements. So I have those on the back of this plan, so I can just quickly review those. So just look at your projects for the interval. Look at those tasks, look at your vocations and say, oh yeah, I remember doing this. Okay. Then, and just looking, right? So you haven't even done anything except look at them yet. You can cross that off, or I fill in the bubble. Do a 5-minute brain dump about last week or anything on your mind or that you find in your notes. So that's what this space here is. And if there's like free association brain dump space at the bottom, but there's also a place for notes, and that might be, you might have grocery list, just kind of put stuff down. To-do items, you can have a little separate spot for keeping track of those so they don't get lost in the brain dump. So this is the sheet. The weekly review process sheet is what we're filling in right now. There we go, it focused. So we're on item number 2, where we're just doing a 5-minute brain dump. And if you don't have that sheet, just follow along with the instructions in a blank sheet of paper. If you had 2 blank sheets of paper and your calendar, then you're good to go. Okay. Brain dump for next week. Looking, and it's also helpful. So start by thinking about this last week. Good things, bad things about this last week. And I don't know about you, but whenever I start always with what I didn't do. It's just the way my brain works. And I know I'm not the only one. So I didn't do this. I didn't do this. But we can't stay there. So we're brain dumping. I personally am starting off with a list of what I didn't do this week. And you can't, that's part of the brain dump, and that's good. We're evaluating last week. But if we evaluate always in negative mode, it's like putting ourselves in handcuffs and making it even more difficult to move forward. So go ahead and get those out, and then think about what you did get done this week. What were your top 3 successes this week? Include that in your brain dump. And as you look at what you didn't do, we can also be thinking about, why is that? Was I missing something? Did I not understand something? Was it not clear enough? Is there some way I could add a support somehow? Accountability or something, some way to add support so that I move forward better next week. Thank you, Jen. Okay, so we're brain dumping. Yay! Dawn got all her steps this week. She beat me. Good. Good. Okay. So we're going to move on. Some brain dump about last week. Then review the calendar and note things that need to be done. So, oh, that mouse isn't plugged in. Okay. Yay for morning time every day. Awesome. Okay. So I am going to miss the chat here for a few minutes as I look at my calendar. So we're going to look at our calendar for this next week and say, okay, based on what's on my calendar this next week, what needs to happen? And my calendar looks super empty, and that's because I have some turned off. Better turn those back on. Okay. So I need to check that I have chicken in the freezer because I have chicken on the menu plan for Monday with people over. So I better double check the amount of chicken that I have in the freezer today. I'm going to Costco anyway today, right? So I'm actually going to make myself a today column here. Double check chicken in freezer. I see I have a recurring park day event and those are actually over. So I'm just going to delete that. This and all following. I see, let's see, I have a few book club meetings coming out. So I need to make sure I note what I need to read for my book clubs. Give myself due dates for that. So we're just looking. I'm going to come see what's happening over here at this video again. So I just renamed my weekly overview the weekly dashboard. It's actually pretty much the same. And so in simplified organization, it's still called the weekly overview. And it's very similar setup to this, a little bit different, but same idea. When I start editing and revising simplified organization, it will be called weekly dashboard. Yeah. So yeah, look at when you're leaving the house. Like, what do I need to have to leave the house this week? Let's see. I just talked to our piano teachers. Let me double piano teacher last night and got our piano schedule ironed out. But yeah, that is on the calendar for when we start there. So there you go. Co-op starts Friday. I need to prep for my class. Yes. Let's see. The vocation section. So that's an older version. And what I have used that for right now, I have that on mine. I have that on my interval plan. And that's just to remind myself of what those vocations are. So they kind of get in my brain. And I might put like what my focus is this week, where it's not even a task so much as, you know, under homemaker, it might be smile at the kids, little things like that, where it's just a little reminder of the focus that I want to have for that vocation. It's not necessarily a check-offable something, but just a reminder of, okay, smile more, or smile into eyes. That sort of thing. So, so we've looked at our calendar now and put some tasks, preparations, updated our calendar, like, oh yeah, I forgot to put that on my calendar. So that's what we're doing. Took some notes based on what was on our calendar. I think I'll write one more down. Okay, so check that one off. Do you have what you need for meals? I kind of mentioned that one on mine because that's on my, I keep my menu plan on my calendar. So do you have a meal plan? I do. I make my meal plan for 6 weeks during my prep week. But if you menu plan every week, your weekly review is when you need to make sure you have a menu plan. If you don't already, then that needs to be part of your weekly review. And your weekly review might take a little bit longer that way, but this is when you make sure you know what people are eating. So if that needs to be written on your weekly list, on your weekly dashboard, put those meals on. Mine's on my calendar, so that's where I see it. But it needs to be somewhere where you'll see it, where you have a plan, then you'll see it, hopefully with enough time to do things. So there we go. So we make sure we have a menu plan. And so we're kind of jotting down a grocery list as we go. Okay. How are the interval projects progressing? So now we go back to that interval plan that we just glanced at and say, all right, what were my top 3 projects this week? And this is really where we're narrowing down. We're not expanding. We've done the brain dumping. So we think of a million things we could be doing, some different new ideas for different projects. We're bringing ourselves back to what we're focusing on and saying, okay, no, not all of these other things. What am I really working on this interval? Oh, nailing the new school year routine. Right. How did I do this last week? Not so good. So what is my most important one way I'm going to do that this week? Because, you know, there are like 10 things a day that go into making that school routine happen. Well, what am I going to commit to this week for really building that? Because that nailing the school year routine is an interval project, not like I am going to be perfect at that right from the starting gate. We're giving ourselves an interval to get there, right? So that's where thinking of it as a project helps me, because otherwise I would say, okay, this is who I'm going to be starting Monday. And it just doesn't work that way. This is where my focus is going and where I'm going to be intentional this interval and gradually improve in over the course of the interval. So, I need to make sure I'm not on the computer during school hours. So, that's a very bad habit that I need to break. And so that's what I'm going to be super intentional with next week. That one piece there, because that one is going to make all the others easier. So, so then I started thinking, okay, how could I make that happen? Just resolve is not really quite enough, because I've tried that before and it didn't work. I need a timer reminder. And I think I can actually ask my husband to set up something on the router where my computer gets cut off from the internet at a certain time. And I've done that before. I did it a few years ago, and it worked to break a bad habit that I had, just time-wise. So I'm for this next week, we're going to cut my computer, the laptop internet off. And so I'll give myself a 5-minute reminder that that's happening on my phone. So there we go. That's my action plan moving forward. One focused piece for this big project that has a lot of moving pieces, but what's the one that I'm really going to zero in on this week and make happen? That's the one. Right. It depends, because my computer is only my computer and the kids have a different one. So that doesn't affect us. And we can turn it off just to my laptop, so I can still have my phone, because, we pull music or whatever. So yeah, totally going to be a new person. I know, that's always the plan. And then that's why it doesn't ever work. Okay. So we're looking at those projects and deciding on the one thing that will move us forward. Did that. Next, what are the 3 big things that need to happen next week? So if you're in Convivial Circle, these are your top 3 goals for the week. And this is when we're thinking about them and setting those and then writing them down. So one of those for me, because I made that intention about the project, that the consistency project, which is big, I made a smaller commitment for it. And that's going as one of my 3 weekly goals. So the weekly goals are not another extra thing. They are, what am I really zeroing in on and what's important to me this week? So that's going to go on my list right here. Weekly goals. So, and I'm going to use the goal formula that I recommend there and say, I will stay off my laptop between the hours of 7:30 and 11. I've looked at my time budget. I know that's when it needs to be. So that I am consistent with school. The so that helps remind us that these aren't just random things. These have a purpose, that we want more than, checking email. So that I will start school on time, basically. That's what that's going to help with. And then I put 3 little bubbles under mine to say, what do I need? What are the 3 big things that will make this happen? So I would put on there, following the timer, setting an alarm not only for a reminder that I need to get off, but also I need to reset my morning time. So I'm thinking about those starting the day things, and what do I need to do to make this happen? There we go. Okay. Oh, I'll put that back up. So I can write the goal here and then 3 things here. I like the bubbles. Oh yeah, the running. Yeah, I was writing 9 goals. Yeah. 3 goals, each that have 3 specific things to do to help make them happen. So, and of course, a lot of times goals have more steps than that, but we're trying to really narrow down and select the top priorities, because that's how we focus in. There are always a million things to do, but we're not trying to do a million things first. We're zeroing in and doing what's most important. And then we can do the other things as we have time or capacity, or they become urgent. But this is the reminder in front of our face of what's most important. There you go. Drink more water. So, okay, drink more water. That's a great one. I'm highly in favor of drinking a lot of water personally, but if that's the goal for the week or the area you want to grow in for the week, get specific. And that can either be drink X amount of ounces or X number of water bottles. And it could also be even more specific than that would be drink a glass of water first thing in the morning, because then you're giving yourself a time and an amount. And then you can build a habit that way when it's anchored to a trigger. Or it might be make sure I have my water bottle before starting morning time, and I drink that. And when I'm done with morning time, I have to be done with the water. So where we're tying in the action to our day is going to help us have more success than if we keep it as drink more water, which is still kind of vague. It's a good thing. And yes, water bubbles, that helps. But especially if we can tie, and yeah, that's on mine too. There's a lot there, but well, what did I put 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there are 8. It looks like a lot. So I have that on my health thing as well. Right, but having those goals that are tied to times really helps. There you go. Awesome, Jennifer. And if you can't think of a third thing for that project, that's totally fine. We're just choosing the top 3. So we don't want to choose more than a top 3 for each one. There's 2. That's awesome because that's doable, right? So you want a copy like that has my chores in it and everything. These are my sweep and smile things. These are my health goals. Yeah, it says 12K, which is for steps up there. And I think I got like an average of 5 or 6K this last week. So I didn't check those off. Well, yesterday was the only day last week where I got to check that one. But yeah, it is as an editable PDF. So if you go to the ask a question, well, there's a PDF where all of these are blank and you can fill it in. Or there's a document or a pages so that you can edit it in your word processor. Okay, sure. I'll give you mine. How about I send it out in the follow-up email so I can turn it into a PDF and send it as an example. And do you know what I'll do? I'll write that, since I said I would do that, I will write that down. Okay, so we talked about what the big 3 things are for our week. Then we're going to check and update that task management system. So if you have that already, now is the time to look at it and see what's coming up. And okay. There we go. Okay. Yes. So I will send that. If you have a task management app or list or tickler file or whatever you have, or right now, maybe you just have your brain dump notebook, you can flip through that and say, all right, what are the things that need to happen this week? Those little things, they're not really a big project. But I want to give myself credit if I do these things. So, folding the laundry might go on there, even though it's a routine. Whatever it is that you want to put in front of your face as you really should do this and not procrastinate. Or you really should give yourself a check mark for that. So, this is where I had make the eye appointments, if there's a particular errand that you need to run, maybe doing grocery shopping at all, that can go on there. Anything that is just something you should do that you want to keep in front of your face and also give yourself credit for doing. So on the dashboard, this is where that goes. These bubbles here are for writing down small tasks to do or less, and you don't have to use them all. You probably shouldn't use them all, but I was just being realistic for myself here. So last week I think I had 3 over here, and then I used these ones to write down errands that I had to run because I had more than usual in different ones. I had to go to the bank. I had to pick something up. So I put the places I needed to go over there and a few things like eye appointment over here. Right. So when do we process our brain dump lists? We're kind of doing that. So as you, because you're looking at your calendar, you're looking at your brain dump list, and you're putting things that, so this is process. If you're putting it on your week's list, that is processing it. If it's in there and it should go somewhere else, then, put it in the task manager, put it in the reference. And when things are running smoothly and this is a regular habit, that can become a part of your weekly review because it's not a giant task. But someone like, Stephanie, I think, is at the point where she can do that, make sure everything's put away during her weekly review, basically, because that's what processing is for the information. Make sure things are in the reference, make sure the tasks are in the task manager. If we haven't done that during our evening review or other times, but if you have a giant brain dump and this is all still new and you're feeling your way, you're setting up your task management, you're setting up your reference, you're not in the swing of things yet, you're still really in setup mode, then you're going to want to set aside some extra time. So maybe that goes up here on your list, where maybe each little checkbox is 15 minutes of moving things from my brain dump to where they belong. So it really depends on where you're at and how much stuff you have. At the point where it's set up and you're comfortable with it and you've been doing a weekly review, then I think step number 2 on the checklist is clear inboxes. And that is basically your notes to set clear. Make sure all urgent business in your inbox is dealt with. That could be brain dump too, because your brain dump is an inbox. It's notes to self that are not yet processed, that are not yet put in their home. So, but if that's a giant overwhelming thing, then make that a separate activity and not part of your weekly review. But we're looking at that brain dump list or a task minute, wherever we have information, to put what it needs to happen now onto our list. So what do you feel the most pressure about, or what would relieve pressure if you did it this week? And do you have the time to, you're looking at your calendar. Do you have time to do it this week? So we're looking at everything. We're trying to take that big picture view, looking at the brain dump, looking at the calendar, looking at what we have going on, even in our own heads, right? That's the brain dump. And calling out on our weekly list what we're going to try to accomplish this week, being realistic about our time. Okay. Then fill in your weekly dashboard for the next week. So that's the last thing on this life review thing. And we've kind of been doing it already. So then we just go through, and one of the things that I do, so I use, and you can use this same dashboard any way that you want to, but this is what I'm doing. Make sure it gets focused here. So I'm using these purple squares for appointments. So even though I have my calendar and I look at my calendar, I find that writing it out, and whenever I'm looking at my tasks, also seeing what's coming up right there all together on one page, I really like that. So I fill in the appointments, like out of the house appointments, and then online appointments like this one would go in these purple boxes. It's a lot to process on the fly. So you weren't supposed to have gone through Work the Plan before, but a lot of these people who are here have. And so if it feels like you're behind the curve from other people in the chat, like, don't worry about that. You are where you are. Other people have been working on this for a long time. And I think they will tell you they're still here because they still need refreshers. I still need refreshers. I still need to clean up my systems. It's not something where now we're going to be, 100% on top of things, but we're going to be in a better place, and we're going to know what we need to do. We're going to have our minds wrapped around our responsibilities, and we're going to be able to make meaningful steps forward instead of just feeling frantic and scattered. So wherever you're at, this is helping you take the next right step to experience more calm, confident choices. But that's not the same thing as having it perfectly worked out with the exact planner that you want to use for the rest of your life. It's just, in some way, keeping in front of your face what you've decided to focus on next. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to look put together. It doesn't have to feel put together. But as you grow in the habits over time, you will come to customize this process and your pages and all of that so that it fits you and is attractive to you and works for you. And you'll continue to adapt it as life changes and as you get more experience. But we're just taking the next step and building these better habits from where we are to the next step for us. So, yes. Yes, it's never done. Okay. Well, the weekly review process sheet is new. So that's a new thing. I've only been using it for about 3 weeks. So like, we're just going to roll this right in. I think it is a helpful thing. Okay. So my planner is this covered clipboard. Let's see, I have an article in there that I wanted to read a few more times, but this is where my plans live. So it's covered so that the pages don't get too bent out of shape. And it has the clipboard on there. And sometimes I use this inside bit to put Post-it notes or notes to self. And then this will hold my interval plan and my weekly time budget, which we will talk about briefly. I think this might not only start early, but also go a little bit late. But so I put my weekly time budget on there, and this, I like to have it color coded by vocation, but I'm just not there yet with figuring out where things are going. I still, for their new school year, like I said, I just talked to our piano teacher last night, about when our lessons would be. So this is still very much a pencil weekly time budget, and it's going to adapt for these first few weeks of the new school year as we get things into place and figure out where things fit. So interval plan, weekly time budget, and then my weekly dashboard, which will be filled in. It also will have, I should have brought it, I left it upstairs on accident, but on Monday, when we talk about the daily things, there's another new kind of review process sheet. It's similar, but for every day. And it's called the weekly examen. And I just thought it was examine. It is a noun. And my husband said, because he was doing the tech work of updating some of the links and stuff for me, he said, I think you misspelled this word. I'm like, no, it's a real word. Did you try looking it up? It's a noun, and it basically means a review. So it's awesome. And then he said, so then he's like, okay. And then he came back and he said, so did you look up how to say it? Are you going to get on live and say examine? Because that's not how you say the word. So it's examine. I'm not sure if I would have chosen it. I don't know. Anyway, it was just funny. So there's a page called the evening examen. And that's where we're going to do a quick end of the day brain dump for what did I actually accomplish today. But we're going to talk about that on Monday because that's in the daily view. But I would keep that sheet on my clipboard so that it's handy. So this is my planner, but that's all it has in it. Since my calendar is online, my task manager is online. I'm using OmniFocus right now for my task manager. Yes, it is French. Yes, thank you. Mignon has it there. It's examen. But we'll talk about that more on Monday. My teacher plans, right now those are upstairs because I'm working on those. I have a 1-page like my weekly dashboard. That's for keeping track of what the kids are doing for school. So I do have one more page that's a homeschool planner page. And it's kind of the master checklist. My kids work from checklists and they have their checklists on their clipboards. And I have what everyone else has on my master checklist. That'll be on my clipboard. I'm actually thinking that what I don't like is having the different plans covered up. So I'm actually thinking with this closed clipboard that I will put I will tape the teacher checklist on this part here so that I can open this up and see both of them at the same time, because I was having trouble last week seeing one or the other of that, like just moving the papers around. It doesn't seem like it should be that hard or be that big of a deal, but it is. So I need to be able to see them both at the same time. And I realized, hey, I can do that. They can open up kind of like a book. So that's what I'm going to do. I will probably share my teacher checklist in an upcoming post on the blog. So I know that kid checklist stuff is always a hot topic, and especially this time of year. So I think I'm going to write a troubleshooting checklists post that has pictures and stuff. So, all right. So let's talk about that weekly time budget. So if you have, how many of you have done a weekly time budget before? Yay. I see some people doing, I'm sad that I didn't get mine color coded yet because I much prefer seeing my time budget color coded. Color coded by a vocation. So, where are my pens? So I have the weekly time budget. It has the bits there, the times. I would go through. So I also wrote my vocations up here. And I would go through then and circle or box in a certain color. So I usually use green for homemaker. So I would put a green box around homemaker. And then after I kind of finalize this weekly review or this weekly time budget, which I really should not finalize until after at least probably 2 more weeks, because a lot of these things don't start until the week after next. And so it needs to stay pencil for a little while longer to see if this is really going to work. But once I do know that it's where I want everything for the week, then I would go and put boxes around. Let's see, where am I? Some of these I know for sure. So I like to use orange for school. So some of these are definitely for sure. So I would put box around elementary lessons, even though we're doing school before that also, a box it as a separate like chunk and not necessarily, and this is reserved time. It's not like I'm setting a timer and we have to move on, but it's more like first we're doing this, then we're doing this. So it is a flow chart, but the problem I had with creating a flow chart was that I put too many things in it. It wasn't actually functional for that time. So I would have first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And when I actually put times, I had approximate times with plenty of margin. And I said, oh, but no, we actually are not going to do school for 5.5 to 6 hours every day. We're not. So I've got to rearrange things or reassess things, change things up because no wonder I'm not getting to all of it in my flowchart. Like I'm always skipping something. And why have it in your flowchart if you're always skipping it, right? So knowing that the things on the flowchart take time, and it's not that this is a schedule where, you know, from 9 to 9:30, I am doing phonics with Geneva. It's probably more like 10 to 15 minutes, but I have that half hour blocked off because the transition time, someone asking a math question, like this is all school time, but these are the things I want to make sure I accomplish before lunch. And so there's before lunch time blocked off. Yeah, it is a challenge to make a time budget that reflects reality. And it is something that will take a lot of iterations before you figure out. But it's so good as an exercise to do because you become aware of what is taking time. And it makes you think through things like, you know, this was 2 years ago or something where I had my time budget all lined out and it took me like 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm like, why is this not working? I don't understand. I had no grocery shopping time. Like I had stuff to do in my time. I had reserved my time for different things and grocery shopping wasn't on there at all. And I'm like, why do I feel like I need to go grocery shopping in the evening, which I don't want to do, or first thing in the morning and use up this time, or skip something else and do well, it's because there was no time blocked off for it. So things like regular grocery shopping, things like folding laundry, things that take your time need to go on the time budget. And then you start to become aware of, oh, that's where my time is going. And the more we can be intentional about it, or even just acknowledge. So, and this is another instance where if you're nursing a baby, like put those half hours on your schedule, even if your baby's not eating on a schedule, you still have to acknowledge that it's taking this amount of time, these kind of time chunks, and it is breaking up your time too. So it's like, oh, well, I don't have 2 hours at a stretch anytime. So I can't function or set up expectations as if I did have a full 2-hour chunk of attention to put anywhere. So here's what I would do for this chunk of time here. So I did it on Tuesday because that's a more settled morning here. So we have morning time. So that's blocked off, and I try to keep that an actual hard start time, which is much easier, I will say, now that I have 2 teens and my youngest is 5. Starting on time is possible for us, so we need to be doing that. Then this is Couch Lessons with Geneva, comes after morning time. So I use this like a flow chart. First this, then this. Then this is basically table lessons with my middle 2 together. So first we're going to do morning time. Then, people are going to get up. I'm going to refill my water or whatever. But the next thing is Couch Lessons with Geneva. And I can also look at that day and say, if I don't do this right after morning time, it's not going to happen. So it's a way to be honest in that flow chart and not think any time is as good as another, but say, you know what, unless I sit down with her right after morning time, it's just not going to happen. Gives me that motivation to just do it. Because if I feel like I have all day and it could happen anytime, I'll do something else and it will never happen. That's the way I function. So I need to feel that necessity, and the time budget helps me recognize the reality of my time. Yes, so just start your first version. Like I said, this one is pencil, and it's going to stay pencil for another 2 weeks at least, so I need an idea. I need an idea of what we're doing before we start, and we started this week, this last week. But because not everything has started up yet, because we're still trying this out, this is a trial run time budget. And so things like the grocery shopping, is that really going to work there? I don't know. We've got to try it out a few times and see. So this is definitely staying pencil for quite some time. And then once I've got the idea of how things are going to flow, I'm probably going to print out another one because I won't like all the eraser marks. And I'll do a fresh one with ink and color and stuff. And then it'll be a reference that I find actually just looking at first thing in the morning just helps give me that big picture view. So kind of like looking at the calendar, but this isn't calendar appointments. This is where I've decided to spend my time. Just kind of glancing at it 30 seconds in the morning reminds me, all right, this is my commitment. We can do this. Let's go. Weekly time acknowledgement. I like that. Right. Calling it a budget makes me feel like I have to make it happen the way I write down. I can see that. And having that idea, I think, was why money budgets didn't ever work for us until right now we're using the app You Need a Budget, which lets you move things around much more fluidly, because that's just life. Time needs to move around. Things come up in time and in money. And what the budget lets you do is see that if this, emergency, this new need that you didn't know about before the day or the week or the interval started comes up, it's going to have to come from something else. Like, you don't magically have more time or magically have more money because this new need comes. You have to cover that new need or that urgency from the resources you have. And so that the acknowledgement still is good, because you have to acknowledge that fact and not work as if it's all just going to expand to fit no matter what happens. You say, okay, well, because I didn't budget time for grocery shopping, I don't have my, let's see, what am I going to pick? Am I going to pick giving it homeschool time? Am I going to pick giving it my lunch break? Am I going to pick giving it my evenings? Am I going to pick giving it my reading time? It's going to take it from somewhere else, because it turns out that grocery shopping is more important than a lot of the other, like, something needs to flex to fit that in. So, right. Or yeah, you accept an invitation with a friend. You say, I'm going to do that because you building this relationship is more important than, and you look at the list and say, then what? Then my house cleaning hour. And you can totally do that. But if you say that intentionally and say, I'm going to spend this hour with my friend instead of cleaning, don't expect the house to be clean, right? Like, it's this give and take. And the more you can be aware of the give and take that you're doing, the more you feel calm and in control, because it's self-control, right? The more focused and clear you are making those choices, instead of just feeling scattered and like you don't know why it's not all working. You see it on paper and you know why it's not all working, and you've decided that it's worth it, for this instead of that. So you're still in charge. It's not the master. It's not a schedule beating you into submission. It's you saying, okay, this is the time I have, and this is how I'm going to be prioritizing things and making good choices. So, all right. Yeah, it's time Tetris. It is. and you have to give yourself plenty of margin and budget. Don't let every half-hour block be spoken for, because that will drive you crazy. And the more kids, or the younger the kids, and triple it if it's a lot of kids who are all young, the more margin, empty space your days need, because your day is mostly meeting those in the moment, unpredictable needs. So that has to be the biggest part of your day, is not your, forward momentum agenda, but mothering. Like, block off every other half hour. Like, I'm just going to do, be a mom, take care of what needs to be taken care of. That's the kind of thing that needs to be on our realistic time budget. We are not CEOs in an office with a closed door and a secretary that can dictate exactly how we spend our time and attention. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is just keep in front of our face our actual priorities and actual commitments. And taking care of our children is one of our commitments. So don't fill in every jot and tittle of time trying to, get things done, because that's not, that's not actually living in our vocation or living out our priorities. There you go. Or if you have teens, you might just need to block off every evening, right? I don't know. I have teen boys who are very much introverts, so we have had very few of the late night conversations, but I can see that happening much more with my middle ones come that day. So this was a lot of fun, and I hope it was helpful. I hope it was helpful to kind of start seeing how all of the pieces really work together, and that all of the point of all of the pieces is just keeping in front of our faces what we need to be reminded of. That's really the bottom line for all of it. So I'll send out that follow-up email, and I'll make sure that all of the handouts and printouts and everything you need is on the seminar page that's linked there, and it'll be linked in the email. It has been taking quite a bit longer than I anticipated to download the video. I have to download it to my computer and then upload it to YouTube. And that's been taking actually several hours to happen. So I will get that out though as soon as all of that happens. So I'll see you later.